So there's no script written for today's video. I'm just going to ramble on, so I apologise in advance. But I just want to complain a little bit and vent about the state of the video game industry. What the f*** happened? Maybe I'm showing my age, but I remember the days when you would just buy a game. You would pay a set amount, you would buy a game, you would play the game. You would enjoy the game. There'd be DLC. If you enjoyed the game, you would buy the DLC. But that would be it. Everything that you wanted from that game was included in the game from the start, for that price. But that's not the case anymore. Now you buy a game and it's full of microtransactions. All the skins that you might want are behind microtransactions. Now it's different. You buy a game and it is bare bones. If, for example, you want a cool skin for a weapon or for your character or for a car, it costs money. That never used to be the case. It used to be you'd buy a Call of Duty and you'd just grind for prestige ranks and skins for your guns. And it was f***ing fun. And we're at a point now where basic gameplay features are now locked behind paywalls as well. And at what point does it stop? There's been a lot of things in the industry recently that have been really rattling me a little bit. And then I recently read that Like a Dragon, the new Yakuza game, New Game Plus, is locked behind a paywall. What the f***? When did they start removing basic gameplay features and then charging you money for them? I mean, it's insane. Now it's buy the game, buy all these microtransactions, buy DLC, buy season passes, battle passes, fucking dungeon keys. I know I've mentioned dungeon keys way more times in my videos than I probably should, but the dungeon key thing in Destiny really pisses me off. They charge whatever they want to charge for a season pass, and then the most appealing thing within that season is the dungeon, and it's not included. It all began with loot boxes. Does anybody remember when Battlefront 2 first released? That game was teeming with loot boxes, and it was all pay to win, and it caused such a stir in the community that people didn't play the game, people didn't buy the game, and EA was forced to remove it all. And the problem is, as long as we, the consumer, buy these products, they will continue to do this. And the reason we've gotten to a point now where they are removing basic gameplay features and then charging you money for them is because we have proved time and time again that we will pay for it. Now, I don't know what I'm suggesting. I guess I'm not really suggesting anything. I've never been one to really think that boycotting things actually does anything. So that's not necessarily what I'm getting at. And I get it. As an individual, you look at the situations and you think, me not buying into this is not going to make a difference. And you're right, it's not. It takes a huge amount of people to not buy into it. Because if we all stop buying these products, these companies would stop doing this really, really fast. Because that's what the gaming industry has now become. It's all about numbers. And yeah, you could say tests, it's always been about numbers. They're companies. But it's not though. Yeah, these are companies and they're looking to make money. But the video game industry used to be different. Sure, there'd be the odd game here and there that maybe pushed the limit a little bit. But generally speaking, video games were pretty safe. You know, I see videos sometimes on YouTube and I see Reddit threads, people saying that they've lost their love for gaming. No, I personally haven't lost my love for gaming. I love video games. I love playing video games. I've loved video games since I was a little kid. But I have lost the love for the industry that gives us these games. These companies have become so incredibly greedy. And I know this is an argument and a complaint that people have made for years at this point, and you're probably sick to death of hearing it. And it wasn't a planned video either. But it needs to be said, even if only a handful of people listen to it. What has happened to the video game industry over the course of the past 10 years is appalling. And it is only going to get worse. You know, now that we're at a point where they're removing basic gameplay features and then charging you for them, how much further can they go with it? I'm pretty sure that a few years back when Metal Gear Rising released, Konami was charging people for additional saves. This kind of bullshit is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And then ultimately you're paying $60 just to open the door, and you're going to end up spending a hell of a lot more than that to be able to enjoy the game at its fullest. I guess I miss the days of buying a game and it being complete and ready to play, not buying a game on release that's broken, because that's another thing that the industry now does. They release games that aren't finished, they know they aren't finished, and then they fix them with updates later on. In what other industry can a company get away with that? Releasing a product that they know is incomplete at the price of a complete product, knowingly, to then patch it later on. That's what it's become. So now you're paying $60 for a new game on release that is not finished, and then you're going to have to spend a hell of a lot more than that to actually enjoy the game as a full game. You know, free to play games, things like that, that's a whole different thing. The game is free. The devs have to make money. So microtransactions and things like that in free to play games is a whole other thing. I have not got an issue with that. But when you're paying full price for a AAA game from a studio that is worth billions, half of the content is not included in the cover price. That is f***ing egregious, and it has got to stop, because it will kill the industry. You know, video games could potentially get to a point one day where the average working person can't afford it because it costs so much money. And that sounds outrageous, but it is possible. And all of this is coming out of an industry that is worth more than the music industry and the film industry combined. The video game industry is a fountain of wealth. These companies are incredibly rich. And yet, for some reason, we're seeing mass layoffs across the board. Ironically, I was going to make a video on the mass layoffs, but I didn't want to produce a negative video. And now I'm making this one. I don't like to make content like this, but I do feel like we have to talk about it. Mass layoffs across the industry. So many developers are cutting their teams in half. Even Microsoft. It's disgraceful. Large companies buying up small studios and then laying off half the staff. I mean, Microsoft spent $75 billion acquiring Activision Blizzard and then lay off staff. $75 billion. Bungie spent several $1 million building a new office for staff who mostly work from home, and then they lay off half their staff. I feel like money management in this industry is appalling. You know, these layoffs destroy people's lives. People have mortgages, they have rent, they have children to pay for, and they're being laid off from an industry that throws money around. I just can't get my head around it. Now when I look at the video game industry, I just see greedy, disgusting companies. And that is so, so sad. As I said previously in the video, I have no real point to make here. I'm not suggesting that people do any particular thing. This is purely me venting. And I know that a ton of people out there feel the same way. And I apologise for the doom and gloom video. This will not become a doom and gloom channel. That is not what I set out to do. It's not the kind of content that I want to make regularly. But I do feel like it needs to be talked about. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate every single one of you who comments, who subscribes, who likes, who watches. It really, really does mean a lot to me. And on that note, if you enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing. Good night, sub. Peace.